Hello, Assalamu alaikum. So, on today's Simple Muslim Money podcast, I'm going to be talking about why most stock picks kind of fail and why that's okay, actually. And generally, what you find is in most people's portfolio, there's only certain stocks or certain sort of life events that really will make up for most of the profit and gains that anyone has in their portfolio. It's a very kind of simple concept. I don't want to make it sound more complicated than it really is. So, if you're just new here, then this is the Simple Muslim Money Podcast, which is all about simple halal investing and personal finance for Muslims. Now, I'll be reading one of my favorite books, which is Psychology of Money. It's a really great book by Morgan Housel. Highly recommend it for most people. I'll be sure to have a link below to that in the description. And in this book, one of the things he talks about how most of our stock picks or most of the things that we kind of invest in will not do that great. And it's only probably about 40% or something of the stocks that we kind of pick that, kind of do well or do decent. And even rarer than that is very few that do amazingly well. So, when we're talking about your Amazons, your Teslas, that's but Tesla's doing really well at the moment. Your, Facebooks, Googles, Airbnbs, your Ubers, these sort of like massive that, these are called unicorns. So they're very rare that they happen, but they can make like massive amounts of money. And and some companies will go out of business. That's just the way it is. I remember like BlackBerry, like their phones, they used to be like massive, loads of people used to use them, and suddenly they just went out of business. I think they just didn't keep up and things like that, and no one would have thought it. There was such a big company, it was so popular in the kind of business world. So yeah, that was amazing. So things like that will happen. So one of the best things to do is to diversify, invest in lots of different sort of stocks. And the way I do that, and it's very easy, and what a lot of people from the FIRE community, which is the Financial Independence Retire Early community, if you just kind of Google that around, you'll see lots of information about it. Is that they're kind of investing in index funds. The great thing about index funds is it just automatically spreads your money across the top companies. And when I say company, I'm not talking about 5 or 10 companies. I'm like 100, 200, 300, 400 sort of different companies. And what it does is if one company does go bust, it just automatically replaces it with another company because it's all done automated in an automated kind of way. And yeah, it's very kind of easy to use. It's just a case of just like kind of investing your money regularly, and it kind of handles, for me anyway. I want to put a disclaimer out there as well. I am not a financial advisor. Anything I say is just from my own experience, and it's just for information and educational purposes. I'm also not Islamic scholar, so I'm just kind of just sharing some of the kind of information that I found. And these index funds are kind of all kind of have a Islamic scholars on the board, so they're kind of pretty good. And one of the things Morgan Housel talks about in his book is like there is only certain events in your life, in your career, that will make the biggest gains, the biggest differences to your portfolio, as well as potentially there could be like a massive recession or something like we had in 2008, where prices went really sharply low, or there could be something that really kind of boosts the prices up as well. So like there could be a company that's done amazingly well. The thing is, we can't time these things. We don't know when they're going to happen. So it's important for us to just kind of just stay in the market. And another really good way to kind of think about this is if you look at Silicon Valley. In Silicon Valley, they have big venture capital investors. So what this means are people that invest in new companies and startups and things like that. And there's absolutely loads and loads and loads and loads of them. And what they do is they invest in absolutely lots of them. So for every Google or Uber or Airbnb that does really well, there's probably like loads and loads, hundreds and hundreds that don't make it, and they kind of just lose a lot of money on those. However, the ones that do make it end up covering for all of those losses and more. They do like amazingly well, and that's exactly the same thing that can be done with index funds. You kind of invest in a whole bunch of companies, and you just kind of just put your money in there and leave it. Automatically does it all for you. And in the long term, it deals with companies going out of bust and replacing it with other companies, and you just leave it. And on average, these can do something like 7 to 8% a year. So it's very difficult for us to pick always who the stock pick winners are. If we could, then you would see a lot more people doing amazingly well, but it's just very hard to do because one, you have to time it, and who knows when it can happen. You need to have the right information, and it's very hard to get that information. You're getting it from these kind of workstations and things like that, and by the time you could get that information, it could be very late as well. So that's why all the money is, as Morgan Housel says, is kind of in the tail. So this is like all the other sort of companies you have in there as well. So it's very important to have your money kind of diversified, because you're going to get bits of gains from those sort of companies, as well as your Amazons, your Teslas, your I don't know, your Facebooks or what have you. So it's very important to kind of have your money diversified. And pretty much it's very hard to beat the diversification of an index fund. It's just over hundreds of companies. It's all kind of automated and it performs amazingly well. And it's what Warren Buffett, which I've kind of repeated on this channel many times, is that he recommends that most people should be investing in the index fund. And Warren Buffett, for those that don't know, is the sort of best investor out there, who's done amazingly well for years and years and years. Now, that's it for now. So if you've liked that video, please leave a comment. If you've got any questions, smash that like button. If you're listening to the audio version, we'd really appreciate you kind of subscribing to the podcast. Thank you for listening and watching. Assalamu alaikum.